Hello there. I've been playing Shadow of War since release, and with an average of 2,000 daily players on Steam, I thought I would make a series of guides to help anybody who just started playing the game, or maybe older players looking to learn something new. So without further ado, let's get started. In this guide to Shadow of War, I'll be covering the first few hours of the game until you acquire the new ring. Timestamps are in the description and there will be chapters throughout the video. This guide will encompass game difficulty, story missions, as well as the basics of the Nemesis System, gear, skills, combat, and stealth, as well as the secondary objectives that can be found throughout each region. Let's start with difficulty. There's easy, normal, Nemesis, Gravewalker, and brutal. Easy is geared more towards those of you that want to enjoy the story without dying more than a few times. Normal offers a bit more of a challenge, but is still easily played through. Nemesis difficulty increases the rate of Nemesis events within your playthrough, and guarantees you will experience all of these events at least once. Second to last is Gravewalker. This is, in my opinion, the second best difficulty to play the game in. It's the most challenging and offers an experience where you have to ensure the full use of the game's combat and stealth mechanics, as well as having to use the captain's weaknesses against them. Finally, there's Brutal, which I prefer over every other difficulty because it is as difficult and challenging as Gravewalker, but grants you increased damage, might, and wrath gain, making you feel strong while ensuring that all enemies are still a threat. Both Gravewalker and Brutal guarantee that all Nemesis events will happen far more often than any other difficulty. Shadow of War's story missions are narrative-driven scripted quests and will be your main focus during these first few hours. As such, I recommend completing all Minas Ethel missions until you are asked to fast travel to Kirith Ungol. Once completed, I encourage you to take your time to learn the game's other features and gameplay loops. During this time, you'll be able to hunt, kill, and loot captains for XP and higher quality gear. You should also take this time to get used to the traversal, combat, and Nemesis mission systems, so that you can be well prepared for the late game and will allow you to unlock a few skills early on while making you higher level, which in turn will let you get higher level gear and in the mid game, higher level orc followers. If you're traveling to Kirith Ungol, the game will provide an explanation into the army hierarchy and introduce a few new enemy types, the main of which will be the Olaghai, or War Trolls. During this time, the game will slowly introduce new enemy types, such as the dual-wielding savages or the tanky defenders. Once you've finished all Kirith Ungol quests, you can continue playing in the region or return to Minas Ethel to continue the story. It's important to know that story missions will always scale to your level, and some reward you with legendary gear, so you may want to wait to complete some missions in order to get better quality legendary gear. Every region has a variety of collectibles that provide lore, puzzles, or challenges, and upon completing all items of a certain type will grant you a skill point. The towers will mark all collectibles on your map while also progressing the Altario questline, so they are a must for every region. Once all collectibles of a certain type are collected in all regions, you will gain a legendary gear or a skill upgrade used to enhance certain skills. Now, onto the stars of the show, the orcs. These are your main antagonists throughout the entire game, and they are all unique and inspired with thousands of different voice lines and personalities. And they are all brought to you through the revolutionary Nemesis System. They will become your rivals and pretty soon, your bodyguards and commanders of your armies. Each grunt orc has the opportunity to become a captain. Every captain can then become a war chief, and a war chief can go on to become the overlord of a region. Each captain has their own unique sets of strengths and weaknesses that you can exploit. This allows for millions of combinations for you to create your own stories with these captains. I'll have more details on the Nemesis system in a future guide, probably the next one. Gear is the primary loot you'll find throughout your journey. Killing captains, opening chests, and completing challenges all award you with gear ranging from common to legendary rarity. All gear can be upgraded to your current level using Myriad, the endgame currency. Excess gear can be destroyed for Myriad. You can also upgrade rare, epic, and legendary gear that will grant you unique perks attached to said gear. There are also gems that can boost stats such as damage, health, or experience gain. You don't need to give too much importance to gear until you reach level 65. Until then, just use whatever suits your playstyle. I'll have a separate guide for gear and gems in the future. You unlock skills using the skill points you gain from leveling or collectibles. These range from executions to riding fire-breathing drakes. I recommend unlocking all base skills before unlocking any upgrades for them, since they will grant you access to features like freezing or poisoning orcs. Upgrades will enhance or add elemental damage like poison or fire to your special moves, so make sure to unlock as many as you can to have an advantage towards the late game. This will also provide a prime opportunity for experimenting with different builds once you have the appropriate gear. Combat in Shadow War consists mostly of large-scale group confrontations. You'll rarely be facing captains alone, so to aid you in these battles, you have a few weapons and skills at your disposal. Executions will kill grunts and deal large amounts of damage to captains. Your bow allows for damage from afar, and once skills have been unlocked, allows you to travel at light speed to your target and execute them with a shadow strike kill. You can roll to avoid damage or get behind enemies. And when surrounded, you can use your glaive to sweep around you, knocking down any enemies, leaving them vulnerable to ground executions. It's important to know that by default, you will have at least one last chance, which allows you to avoid a killing strike after being knocked down. This is on every difficulty except Gravewalker, where you have no last chance and must unlock the appropriate skill in the combat skill tree. I should also mention that you unlock the execution skill, you will need Might to perform said execution. Might will be filled up by successful hits and is used to perform special moves such as Execution or Consume, which grants health during combat. Finally, there is Oven Rage, which is unlocked after exploring Celebrimbor's barrows in the second mission of Minas Ithil. This can be considered your ultimate move. It allows for multi-target bow shots and makes all special moves far more powerful. To use Oven Rage, you will need to fill your Wrath bar, which is done by killing enemies or when using the Lord of Wrath skill upgrade for the Consume skill. Those are the basics of combat, and now let's move on to stealth. When you first start the game, stealth will be quite limited until you invest in some skill points. But that's not to say that it's useless either. Stealth attacks do way more damage than your regular sword or ranged attacks, and even kill captains in a single hit if they're vulnerable enough. You have two stealth attacks before acquiring the Brutalize skill. These are a standard stealth attack that quickly and quietly kills your target, and a stealth drain, useful for recovering health, and at this point in the game makes enemies flee in terror. After unlocking the Brutalize skill, however, you will be able to perform a Brutal Kill. These add to your Might bar and make nearby enemies flee in terror. And that wraps up this beginner's guide to Shadow of War. If you're a new player, this should definitely help you out during these first few hours, as well as keep you busy enough to get you ready for building your armies and dominating Mordor. Of course, this isn't the only guide to the game out there, so I highly encourage you to check out some of the videos and resources linked in the description. It's great content and very useful for anything ranging from tips and tricks to advanced farming methods and endgame builds. I will of course be making follow-ups to these guides with similar topics, since I believe that there may be something I can add to the wealth of knowledge that has already been gathered by the community. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. It helps the channel out a lot. If you're interested in something a bit more lighthearted or entertaining, you can check out the video on screen. Since this is the first guide I've done, I usually try to be a bit more entertaining than informative. If not, then again, I highly recommend the resources in the description for more Shadow of War content. And finally, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, I can only suggest that you subscribe and like the video. It helps me out a lot. Bye and have a good one.